How does a country confront its own bloody past? A history of land stolen, lives lost, and objects plundered. We've been behind the scenes inside Belgium's Africa Museum, where they're grappling with reshaping the collective memory of a nation. It involves accepting uncomfortable truths, like the inhumanity of human zoos.
Almost every Belgian family has a relative that worked in Congo, and it's very emotional.
Retelling the stories of those long considered heroes.
This man was a murderer. He was the responsible for the death of million persons in the Congo.
And challenging those still unwilling to accept both the historical injustices and the multicultural societies of Europe today.
U spreekt van miljoenen mensen gestorven. Enfin, maar nee.
It's a fight for history, because how the past is told affects the future for generations to come.
We need to radically change that permanent exhibition. We have to become a museum on contemporary Africa. But how do we do that in a historic building with so many symbols of the colonial past?
First created in 1898, the Africa Museum was commissioned by King Leopold II. His initials are carved out throughout the building, a monument to himself and a glorification of Belgium's colonial adventures. Unmentioned, though, were the horrors of Leopold's Congo, a huge slave labour camp where Africans were tortured and the brutalities included chopping off hands.
So there you have, for example, a statue of Maton with the title Belgium Bringing Civilization to Congo. You'll see a missionary there with two young Congolese. They were all there to do it for them. It was a very paternalistic attitude.
Even the architecture sought to reflect this claim. Belgium was bringing light to the darkness of Congo.
But there's not a single reference to the millions of African victims of colonization process. So gallery after gallery has this sort of imprint of colonial glory, of positive aspects, and to convince the Belgian public that really it had to support those activities.
But for 5 years, the place dubbed the last colonial museum in the world has been closed as it undergoes a £60 million revamp. The aim is to take a more critical look at the exhibits and acknowledge the suffering of the Congolese. And rather than removing, they're relabelling.
We looked around, and in all other European countries, they simply closed the colonial museums, and we decided, no, we're going to stay here and we'll do the renovation in here, which is an enormous challenge.
They're due to open in December, but there's still a struggle over what the permanent collection should look like. Some of the objects are highly offensive. Like the leopard man, made famous in the Tintin comics, it perpetrated stereotypes of the savage African man.
I grew up in the 50s, in a village not too far from here, and we regularly came here. And I often tell the story of how I felt about Africa every time I came into this museum. And it was one of fear, because what did I see here? Africans naked, with spears, with snakes.
The museum is determined to change that. They're introducing new exhibits by Congolese artists to confront objects from the past.
I really needed to create something to be in dialogue with these colonial statues. Yeah. I need the hope, I need the peace, I need to work together, all people, and to think together about the future.
This piece is titled Congo New Breath. It plays on contrasts between light and dark in a mirroring of the original architecture. The tree above the face symbolises a journey towards hope.
And they removed the archives.
Yet not everyone is hopeful. Outside the museum walls, some activists believe Belgians are still in denial about their colonial history, and that changes to exhibits aren't enough when the shadow of colonial heroes still hangs over public spaces.
Most of Belgians used to think that
Leopold II was a big king, was a huge king who built a big colony for them and who built most of the beautiful parks, most of the beautiful buildings in Belgium. But they don't want to know what was the origin of this money.
Do you want to see the statue torn down then?
No, we don't think that it's a good thing to remove the statues because it's important for us to teach people. We want a plaque on which it will be mentioned that this man was a murderer. He was the responsible of the deaths of million persons in the Congo.
Instead of removal, they want acknowledgement of a parallel history previously ignored. For 10 years, activists struggled to get a public space in honour of Congolese independence hero Patrice Lumumba. The Belgian government has admitted it was involved in his murder in 1961. So this is it, this space here, that's it?
This is it. It's not a big place, it's not a beautiful place, but for us it's symbolically important because it's at the entrance of the African cultural area called Matonge.
A small strip of pavement next to a taxi rank. But better than nothing for a man who clearly styles himself, glasses and all, on his hero. And this is not just happening here in Belgium. From Cape Town to Charlottesville to Oxford, debates are raging around the world about who should be up on a pedestal and how we deal with dark periods of history. In Europe's multicultural cities, a younger generation descended from the colonies seeks recognition of past horrors, seeing it as a way to explain current discriminations. But they face a battle with those who look back on colonialism with pride.
Verliep allemaal op wieltjes, zal ik maar zeggen.
Guido Bastels worked in the Belgian colonial administration in Congo in the 1950s. He believes the Africa Museum should have been left just as it was.
Krachten aan de gang die dat koloniaal verleden aan de schandpaal willen spijkeren en dat men toch de verdiensten, het fantastische werk dat daar geleverd is, dat men dat helemaal wil verdonkeren manen.
But millions of people died under Belgium's rule in Congo. Is that something you're proud of?
U spreekt van miljoenen mensen gestorven. Maar nee, de bevolking is op schitterende manier toegenomen sedert België aan het bewind gekomen is.
But the brutality of Belgian rule in Congo is well documented. And Leopold didn't just plunder raw materials. In the summer of 1897, he imported more than 200 Congolese people to appear in a human zoo in Brussels. Such was the popularity of this zoo that 1 in 3 Belgians came to visit, and the museum was then established on this very site. The cruel theatre of putting Africans on display behind bamboo fences was common across Europe and astonishingly didn't end in Belgium until 1958.
Some Belgians were obviously very racist. They were throwing bananas and were doing as if they couldn't speak.
7 people died of pneumonia inside the human zoo in 1897 because of the cold conditions. Their bodies were initially dumped in an unmarked mass grave, but then later moved here, a short walk away from the museum. A reminder of the human cost of creating this institution. For decades, the names of white Belgians who died in Congo have been proudly displayed along the walls of the museum, with no mention of any Africans. This mural and other features have heritage status, which means they cannot be changed. But now the names of the 7 Congolese who died in the human zoo will be projected directly opposite. A small gesture in an attempt to remember a horrific injustice.